I'm Mike Sanchez.
And I'm Erik.
We're interviewing thousands of people to learn how they manage their finances. Talking about money's super awkward. We're trying to change that. The more open we are about our finances, the more we can learn from each other and improve our own. This is Safe Space Finance, a place for honest and inclusive conversations about money. Welcome to Safe Space Finance. Today we have a special guest, Ricardo Celleri. I'm going to go ahead and let Ricardo introduce himself, but first I want him to get pumped up, so here we go. So that's a little standing out for you. But yeah, if you could go ahead and just introduce yourself to our listeners.
You want like a full life introduction or just my standard business introduction?
Yeah, man, let's get into it. We're here to learn about you.
All right. Well, I was born in Quito, Ecuador, South America. I grew up on a farm, very much a farm kid, living in a farm every weekend. My mom was American, so I grew up like attending American schools. And at 14, I moved to Minnesota, to Minnetonka. My mom is from Minnetonka, so she wanted me to go to the same high school as her, and she sent me to live with my grandfather, and I took care of my grandfather and my grandmother while I went to high school. So moved when I was 14, moved in with my grandfather and helped him for the 4 years of high school that I was there with him. Then I went to undergrad in Virginia, University of Richmond. I studied poli-sci and French. I was an aspiring future diplomat until I became very much disenchantized with, bureaucracy. So I decided that I wanted to get into business. So I went to work for a big federal consulting firm based out of DC and figured I could mix a little bit of business and my passion for public service in a way that was not so disheartening as purely being a government employee. So after around 5 years of working in DC, I decided I wanted to go to business school, where I attended the University of Michigan Roth School of Business. Let's go, go blue.
I guess.
Yeah, go blue. You can't, numbers don't lie, Mike. And then just graduated from University of Michigan, and I'm living in Chicago, back to doing consulting. And yeah, I just kind of getting my feet back under me, and it's been a little bit about myself.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, out of curiosity, I mean, hell of a journey. First of all, I think that's super cool. We grew up on a farm. I got a billion questions about that, but maybe we do that offline. Out of curiosity, so I mean, school ain't cheap. I mean, Erik and I were over here talking about 529s the other day, and I was talking to another friend about how much they're contributing to 529. It's super expensive to pay for school, especially in the year 2040 for my daughter. Out of curiosity, did you accrue any debt going to either undergrad or to B school at Ross?
Yeah, for undergrad, I had around a 90% scholarship, so that covered for the majority of my undergrad. I still had some debt, which I paid off while I was working for my first 5 years, but then I went again and just took a whole another chunk of debt. Business school is around 200K these days, so that's the hole I'm currently in by choice. Yeah, and it's trading at around 5 to 6%.
Got it. And you have debt for the school specifically, or for school and housing?
school and housing, the entire
Okay.
business school experience.
Okay. Got it. Do you think like given sort of given the job that you've now sort of taken at the firm, do you feel like you have a path to paying off your debt?
I mean, yeah, I think it's pretty like straightforward. Well, not straightforward, but like it's clear at least what I need to do and when it will happen. Like over the next 2 years, I will be working at this company, and they will help pay off the school loan part of the loan. So I will have to end up paying something like 30% of the school loans out of pocket myself, but they'll pay for
Okay.
70% of it. And then the
Okay.
remaining amount I will have to pay out of pocket for my living expenses, my living loans.
Well, Erik is the debt master.
That's a pretty awesome deal, though. I didn't realize that you could get that type of a setup. I mean, effectively paying 30% for the actual, because I'm assuming what you mean by that is 30% of the enrollment tuition.
Yeah, I'm paying
Yeah,
30% of the
yeah,
tuition. Yeah, is what I'll
and
end
then
up
the
paying.
remainder, whatever portion of that was for living expenses, you'll cover.
No, no. So my total loans was like it's like something like 150K
Yeah,
for tuition, and then it was like 50K for my living loans. And
got it.
so my firm will pay for 70% of the 150. So I'll have to pay the remaining 30%. So that is 45K out of my pocket. And then
Hmm.
the other 50K was just living loans, which they won't pay for. So I
Yeah,
will, at the end of 2 years, be in the hole for 95K out of the total 200. So then I'll have to pay the remaining, like, yeah, 95 myself.
got it. Got it. I mean, that's still a fantastic deal, though. I mean, it's a all said 50% off for something that you carry for the rest of your life, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah,
with a
yeah,
degree that will go with you. So that's a
yeah.
pretty good deal.
And nothing will pay for, beating Ohio State twice and living that. So,
Living it,
you
living,
know,
breathing, experiencing it. Yeah,
that
yeah,
and that's priceless.
yep.
Out of curiosity, Ricardo, are you familiar with like debt pay down strategies or no? Like different debt pay down strategies?
I've heard about them, yeah. But the nuances of debt pay down, I haven't gone into the weeds.
Erik, you want to maybe
Yeah.
offer some up?
I'm assuming with those, do you have, is it multiple different loans that you have, or is it one lump loan?
Yeah, I got two loans, so
Two
obviously I
different loans.
focus on with like the higher percent, 6% loan, and then I work my way and pay the lower percent, 5% loan.
That's certainly one way to do it, right? That's like one approach to it is to go for the high interest and then the lower interest. You could also, and I don't know the exact setup of it, but if one of them was slightly higher or lower in balance, I think it's the snowball approach, right? Which is like you pay the lower balance one first, and then that all
Hmm.
lumps into extra payment towards the other one, right? Like you continue the exact same monthly outflow across the two, but you just roll it into your other one. So
Hmm.
it's two different ways mathematically. I think it probably, at the end of the day, if you probably ran the numbers on it, again, not know the numbers, it probably works out that you would pay less interest if you paid the higher interest one first. But from a psychological standpoint, there's that benefit of being able to like
That you
cheer
paid one
yourself.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, like cheer yourself on. Like I paid off an entire, like one of them's gone, and I can lump it in and pay off the other one more quickly.
I mean, the other question is like, do I really want to pay off these loans? Because like last time I paid off my school loans in full, my credit score dropped because I had one less line. So this time around, I'm paying down the loans down to $1. And then I'll let that just sit there and just gather whatever interest they want to bill me to keep my credit score high. So, not, yeah.
I
That's
would I
interesting.
would maybe think about opening up credit cards before that though. Just I understand you on lines of credit, but these will be like, one of the things they look at is age as well.
Age,
So yeah,
diversity of credit, and
yeah,
lines of credit. So that diversity, the school alone adds plenty of diversity.
I know this is a little tangential, but it's kind of a question now that I kind of have for you. Ballpark it. No, it doesn't have to be the full real number, but if you had to ballpark, like how many lines of credit do you think you have open right now? No, no.
Six lines of credit.
Mike, how many do you think you have open, like actively right now? Take your any mortgage out of it, just from
maybe like 3.
standpoint of make 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
I used to, I mean, back in the
I think
day.
I got like upwards of 10, man.
Talk to us about that. What's that?
So again, not from a financial advisor standpoint, but generally speaking, my understanding of credit score, right? Thinking
Yeah.
from a credit score perspective, since we kind of opened that box of worms, it's a combination, right? It's a combination of the total credit that you have been granted, like in a dollar value sense,
And the usage of that credit, percentage usage,
the
right?
usage of that total of that total credit value, right? So let's say you were given, I don't know, $50,000 grand total across all of it. You use 5,000, you're using 10%. 10% is more than they probably are hoping you use, like that you actively have a balance on. You want to try to stay, I think my understanding is stay sub 10%. But it's also a number of different credit lines open because those independent credit lines, my guess, right? Again, not a financial advisor. My guess is it's a demonstration that different lenders have evaluated your financial situation and deemed you a worthy I guess what would you be, leasee?
Lindsay,
Yeah.
creditor,
Yeah.
yeah.
Holder of credit or user, yeah, whatever you want to call it. Obviously not a financial advisor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at Credit Karma right now. So I got 2 credit cards. I got an auto loan, and I got my big home loan. But that's it.
You only have 2 credit cards. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, like I said,
back in the day.
I used to churn them with the best of them.
Nate.
I was about all the credit card schemes. I had the Buddy Pass system with Southwest. So I had the business and the personal. I had I had all the things, but I simplified my life because I got to a point where I just couldn't play the points game to the T anymore and track every single thing and open up.
You gotta step off the court, You age.
So did you get rid? Were you getting rid of ones that carried an annual fee?
Yeah. So I had, almost all those, Erik, the ones that are giving you the best travel bang for the buck. Yeah. Most of those have an annual fee, and so the other piece of it was
I got a lot of them. You can downgrade from being an annual fee. You can still hold the card, and they'll downgrade it to whatever their non-annual fee card is.
Yeah.
And then
you transfer
you maintain that line of credit. Pay for Starbucks once a year on it or every 6 months and keep it open, and now you've got like whatever the line of credit is, that is now open to you by that institution. You're never using it, so your total amount stays here and your usage is like right.
Yeah. And so like I went through something where I lost my oldest credit card. When I was about like 28 years old, I was at work one day and like I was opening an app and I was like, oh my God, my credit score just plummeted. And then I was like, what happened? And it took me a week to figure out that my
Was
oldest
that you or was that me?
Yeah.
Because we had the exact same experience. Yeah.
Oh, really?
It's usually the average age of your credit lines has a big
but
impact.
they closed
right?
my oldest card because I hadn't used it. It was sitting in the drawer, and I was like, hey.
Yeah.
And they closed it on me because I wasn't using it, and that destroyed my credit for a long time.
Yeah. And I'm not like
I've got how we were talking about sinking funds last time? I have like reminders where I every 3 months I will put a charge of like $3 or something on a card that I never touch anymore, just so that they don't come back and go, you haven't used this, we're closing it for you.
Yeah.
I completely agree.
I hang on to those bad boys. I think grand total, it's not like 20 credit cards, but it's somewhere in the range of like 7 to 10 or something like that.
All right. Well, cool. All right. So let's talk a little bit about life goals here. So we sort of know who you are, Ricardo. Do you have any sort of like specific life goals or financial goals that you're sort of looking to attain over the short term, medium term, long term?
I want to own a house on a lake. I want to own a mastercraft like boat. I want to have a horse. I want to have a two-car garage, maybe three, like I'm talking a Range Rover, my Porsche, and like my daily that I use like to do stuff. And
I see it, man. I
that
see this in
is
my mind, and this is
Oh
glorious.
shit.
Yeah.
that is my financial goals. Like
Mm-hmm.
whatever I have to do,
Mm-hmm.
whatever job it's going to be that require me to get there and live that life, I will do. But those and like whatever the number is, but like that's how I backtrack from like okay, that means that I need to do this, this, and this. But like I can't just like come up with some golden number. Like it's easier for me to
Have
come up with an example and then like figure out okay, what does that lifestyle cost, and then figure that out.
Have you guys watched The Bear?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
As
watched the
you were just
first
absolutely.
going through
one.
that, when you got to the end, all I could think of was Heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. So you want to buy a home, and then you've got some things that are basically like motivating factors for you to achieve and for you to get sort of like building generational wealth and be able to sort of live a lifestyle that you pictured.
I
Um,
generational though, that's interesting because I don't want kids, so this generation ends right here.
okay. So you want to build wealth, and that makes sense to me. So are you? I guess at this point, like you're out of school, you've accepted a job, and you've got some debt that you got to take care of. When it comes to an emergency fund, like where you're at today, like how are you sitting with that? Like, do you have an emergency fund set up?
Yeah, I'm at zero with my emergency fund, very sadly. My emergency fund was used for the emergency of attending grad school. I I used to have a ton. I didn't realize, like emergency fund, you really start to realize like what is the value of an emergency fund when I used all of my emergency fund to pay for like a lot of my living in grad school, and that kind of carried me through almost 2 years of not having a job.
Hmm.
So when they tell you like you need to have like at least 6 months in the bank for like things like if you lose your job and like of you like your living expenses. Like I ended up having something like I don't know, easily at least like a year and a half of just pure living expenses that I could have like had. And so unfortunately it's at zero, but like I definitely want to like that build that out as soon as possible. And so over the next few months as the paychecks are coming in, they will go first to just building that cushion and then started to take care of everything else. Obviously, with like still doing my 401k and stuff and my healthcare, but first and foremost, all the money that I do get will go into building that um emergency fund, and then from there I'll start to be able to allocate to the other things that I think I want to do.
Got it.
Yeah.
Um,
So you're contributing to your 401k in that interim.
Yeah, yeah. At the same time, like I'm definitely still contribute, like still actively doing that, but like I'm talking about like all of the net cash that hits my bank account
Hmm.
will stay in that bank account. Like I'm not gonna put that into stocks. I'm not gonna put that into like all of my other like savings accounts. Like
Extra payments against loans or anything like that. Yeah.
yeah, no, it'll all like my first and foremost like will be just build a cushion. Once I have like that 3 months cushion at least, then I'll start doing like extra payments towards loans and like heavier payments towards loans and all of the other stuff and like maybe start like allocating more towards like my stocks and like my other locations. But at least until like I have a cushion to fall back in case I like break an arm or I get laid off, um, I uh, I definitely will be purely focused on that emergency rainy day fund.
Just a question. Do you think that if you were to pause 401k contributions while you were building that, like you'd be able to significantly expedite your emergency fund accrual?
Probably not. It's like 6% that comes out for like my
Oh, for
kid
the
paycheck.
match, to get
Yeah,
the match.
I'm not old timey like you guys. I'm not at 25%, I'm only doing the 6%, so it makes me feel good that I'm contributing,
Whole
I hear
So
time.
you. Yeah, I hear you. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
for sure.
high interest, the sort of tension between high interest debt and free money from a 401k. Like, I'm definitely team like get your free money, but it is tough when the interest is super high. Now, I'll say for you, what is the interest rate you're looking at? Like, are you like sitting at like 5 to 6% on your like
yeah,
in terms
my
of debt
loans
accrual?
are yeah, my loans are 5 and 6%. But the payments that my company will pay towards my loans
Hmm.
are interest adjusted, so they also cover the interest that I'm accruing for the next 2 years on those loans. So
Okay.
technically, they cover the the interest for the next 2 years, 70% of the interest for the next 2 years. But yeah, they're still not nice in the interim.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so it sounds like the plan is to sort of stick to the script, standard paycheck kind of stuff, but then a portion of that paycheck after taxes is going to go towards building up your emergency fund. Have you thought about where that money will go? So that portion that's for the emergency fund, where will that money actually go? Into high yield savings, into some sort of money market, a CD? What kind of things are
Yeah,
you thinking
I'm
about?
probably gonna put it into my money market fund that I've been managing, which yields me like a 4.6 rate, which is like, I mean, either the money market fund or my treasury bills, my T-bills, because I'm not touching that money anyways. It's a rainy day fund, so whatever is yielding the best, I'll probably just throw it in there. I have to check what the option rates are actually, but um, that's probably where I'll just keep feeding. Um, it will definitely not sit in my bank account. No.
Okay. Um, do you have a checking account right now that's like separate from like, so we're talking about an emergency fund, but like just out of curiosity, do you have like a separate thing that you say, this is my checking account, this is like my cold hard cash that I have just sitting in the
Yeah.
bank, unfettered access to, and you've got like a chunk in there as well?
Yeah, I do have like cash that sits in like my drawer and also my checking account.
Okay.
But yeah,
Did you say your drawer?
yeah, I did say my drawer.
That's the real rainy day fund right there. That's awesome. Yeah,
He called us
nice.
old timers. I find that ironic.
Hey, Bobby, you didn't grow up in a farm. Take it easy.
I love that.
Uh,
So you mentioned treasury bills. Have you actually purchased treasury bills before? Have you been through the process of like acquiring treasury bills, seeing it through to maturity and then getting your money out, or having to ever pull your money out prior to maturity?
I would never pull my money out before, but yes, I buy all of my stuff from the government, from the Treasury Direct. Shout out to Treasury Direct. I open up an
can we get a
account.
sponsor from the matter? Do they offer sponsorships?
Yeah, Treasury Direct. Worst website ever,
Yeah.
but it's legit. It makes you feel like you're
Uh,
scammed and it's like someone's gonna take your money, but it's legit. And it did take me 3 months to get that account because I was one of the randomly selected people for additional stuff. Classic randomly selection for me. But did get, once I did get the account open, yeah, like I started putting my funds in. I
Uh-huh.
did Ibonds first, peak pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
was
9%
like
return.
9%. Yeah.
Yes, I was
I
team
bonds.
9%.
I had a moment.
Beautiful. Shout out to Ibonds. And then then I started doing the short-term T-bills because we have this, inverted yield curve.
Given that you're doing, so you're doing T bills for your emergency fund.
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah,
Um, are you doing any type of like a ladder or anything, or doing like shorter maturations, right? Like so, like I don't know,
everything
a
is
year or
one to
something.
1 month, 2 months, like
Oh,
strict.
got it. Okay, in my mind, I was thinking 1, 3,
Those
10,
are those are
30, right?
notes.
Like,
Those are notes.
oh, there you go. See, I obviously don't dabble into T bills too much. So okay,
Yeah.
that
So
that that answer.
notes
Okay, because in
notes
my
are
mind, I
one
was
year and
yeah,
above.
got
Bills
it,
are 1 year and less. Yeah. And
got
they
it.
all
Okay,
mature in either, you can do them the full 1 through 11 months, but I only stick to the shortest part of the curve, which is the 1 to 3, and
yeah.
those auction every 2 weeks, and they will, like, once they mature, they just deposit the money right back into your bank account where it came from with
Yeah.
the added coupon payment. Um,
And what do those go for right now? Like, what's the actual yield on them?
uh, Around 5.5 is what they're hitting right now.
A 1 to 3 month?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I looked at the so
That's
just
wild.
just for everyone's like understanding, he mentioned this thing called an inverted yield curve. The yield curve basically shows the return that you would get on the y-axis and then the maturity length on the x-axis. And so just to keep it simple, you would expect that if you were loaning somebody money for a short period of time, you could basically ask for, a small return back because it's a very short period of time. But if someone's asking you for a long loan, you probably want to make more money on it because you're presented with more risk, right? So you don't want to loan somebody a ton of money.
It's
Uh,
called the illiquidity premium.
the liquidity premium, yeah. And so
Nice.
in essence, all that's happening is you're actually able to buy short-term maturities, so things that you actually invest into and then get a return on your money, a guaranteed return on your money in a very, very short turnaround with a very high interest rate. Typically, the higher interest rates are reserved for longer maturities, but in an inverted yield curve, you're actually getting higher rates in the shorter maturities. So you're able to make a ton of money fast, which is crazy. And a lot of people do look at an inverted yield curve as a bad sign for the broader economy and the broader market. And it's often seen as a sign of an upcoming recession. We've had an inverted yield curve for a while. But it is something that I think a lot of people are taking advantage of right now. And the reason I think we see so many people taking advantage of T-bills right now is because of that, right? That you're getting an incredible rate in a short maturation, but then you're also not having to pay state or local income taxes on those returns. You only pay federal taxes. And so people do prefer them, some instances, people do prefer them to as an alternative to a high yield savings account because you don't have to pay those taxes and you're getting what effectively is a guaranteed return. I will say this. The only difference is that with a high yield savings account, you do have, I would say, slightly easier access to your money in the event that you need it. And so
Yeah.
when we say emergency fund, if you do have an emergency, you would have unfettered access to a high yield savings account, right? Whereas with a
Or a no penalty CD
or a no
would be
penalty
another would
CD,
be maybe a slightly higher rate than just a high yield. Yeah.
Yeah.
yep. So those are some things you could consider is like um, as part of your overall strategy, because right now you do have the inverted yield curve, but you won't always have that. And so you probably do want to look at some no penalty CDs. You might want to look at some options for high yield savings account for when that yield curve returns back to normal.
Yeah. And before you go crazy looking up these T-bills and their quote unquote amazing return that Mike was mentioning, you gotta qualify amazing return because it's 5% in an annualized
Mm-hmm.
period. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like theoretically, if you held that money for an entire year, it would give you 5%, but you have to calculate what the monthly or 3 month like actual return would be. So it's actually like it's 5% for 3 months, but it's not 5% raw, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
And generally that's the way that almost all these cash alternatives work, right? Like if you go and say, "Oh, I want this high yield savings account at SoFi," you're going to see the number you're going to see is like 4.9%. That's the annualized return based on a certain interest rate, right? Same thing
Hmm.
with a no penalty CD, same thing with all these things, right? Like you need to understand that's like an annualized figure and not exactly what you'll get. But I do love that T-bills have, when I say guaranteed, I just mean that rate is locked, right? So like that rate
Get
ain't
that money
changing.
in, get that money out. Yep.
A high yield savings account, that rate fluctuates, right? And you don't have any control over that. It could go up, it could go down and
Oh,
surprise you.
yeah.
So that's, it's just the games we play. But okay. So that's awesome. So it sounds like you've got a lot of sort of active management over your what we're calling emergency fund, but basically it's like sort of your cash alternative, and sort of how you're planning to build up growth in your emergency fund. So that's great. When it comes to credit cards, you mentioned you had like, I don't know, 5 or 6 different lines of credit. So can you talk us through like, what is your credit card game looking like?
The credit card game is looking to me preposterous, but in comparison to Erik, apparently fine. I've got 6 credit cards. I've got 2 cashback cards. I got, which are no annual fee. I've got a Amex Platinum Delta card, which is a 150 a year fee. I've got a Chase Sapphire Reserve, which is a 95 yearly fee. Um, and then I have a venture, and a Capital One venture card. It's got a 95 annual fee, which I just recently took out because I'm in a new apartment and I was going to buy a lot of things that I knew I was going to buy, like big purchases. And so I want to get rewarded on those big purchases. So I looked up what travel card had the best sign up bonus at the time, and it was the venture card. So I figured I'd sign up for it, buy all the things I was going to buy anyway, but at least get a big balloon kind of payout at least. So that's why I took that one out. We'll probably cancel it at the end of the year. Sorry, Capital One. And I think there's one more out there that I'm just
That one, I'm sure there's a way you could downgrade it from the Capital One Venture, which has an annual fee, to one that's a non-annual fee, and then you keep the line of credit, and that expands
yeah,
your credit footprint.
yeah,
I,
but
I
I
don't
don't
know
want.
that for a fact, but that might be worth exploring.
Yeah, maybe. Or I can downgrade I have to downgrade one of them, but I heard that at least Amex and Chase are willing to give you retention bonuses. So if you say, "Hey, I'm gonna be quitting and like I really like you guys, but you're not cutting it for me," they might throw you like 30,000 points just to like stay for an additional year, which I might do if they give me a retention. Um, or otherwise I'll downgrade them. I'll figure something out. But
Yeah.
I don't want that many cards. The Capital One was just for a temporary because I knew I wanted to like make all these purchases. So
Yeah.
So you've opened and closed like credit cards before. Like what kind of impact has that had on your credit score?
not much. Like um I keep one card that's like my original like when I was in high school credit card, and that anchors all of my credit. So compared to that, like the averages will barely fluctuate. So it hasn't really impacted my credit score that much. Not that I'm noticing the credit score is like I've never gotten anything rejected, so I feel good about it.
All right. So as far as investing goes, I think you're obviously within an employer group, so you likely have a 401k.
Hmm.
You likely have looked into an HSA, or maybe you have an HSA, and then you may or may not have a taxable brokerage account. But could you just talk us through in your investing world, like what you've got going on, so we can understand sort of your plays there?
Yeah, I have 2 brokerage accounts. I've got through Vanguard. Um, I have an HSA with zero money in it right now, but it's gonna grow. I just opened it. I what else investing? Sorry, you said
You have a
all of the invest.
401k.
Yeah, I have a 401k through my employer. Has like 60% of my money in there. That's it. That's all of my
Okay. So
investing.
so you have a 401k, you've got a newly opened HSA, and then you've got a taxable brokerage
My
account.
stonks. Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
that's right.
So let's talk about your 401k a little bit. First of all, who is the 401k with? Like what brokerage firm?
Vanguard.
Vanguard. Okay. Um, and what sort of level of contribution? Like you don't have to say the percentage or anything like if you don't want to, but like are you under contributing and you're not able to get the full match? Are you getting 100%
I
match?
max out the match. I'll take every penny that I get,
Okay.
like from my employer to match it, which is very little pennies, but I will take them. And yeah, that maximize. That's like 6% contribution.
Okay. Okay.
Um, and then I have
Okay.
like a 2% contribution to the Roth 401k because I wanted to have 8%. I wanted to have 8% contribution to 401k, but like I've been told that I needed to have a Roth 401k. So, but my employer will only contribute to the traditional. So I was like,
Mm.
I'll put 6% on the traditional, 2% on the Roth 401k, and make myself feel like I have 8%. But I don't know. After we've talked about this IRA thing, I might like the other IRA Roth thing. I might just change that to 8% on the traditional, and then do the figure out the approach the whole Roth thing some other time on the outside of my employer.
Yeah, I think you just do some research into that. I don't know that I may have been remembering something differently. So I mean, I think if it's through Vanguard, my guess is the benefit of doing it in the 401k versus the IRA, they're going to have pretty low fee funds that you can enter into, and it's
Hmm.
probably a pretty varied list that you have. So
Yeah.
it's probably six of one, half dozen the other as far as doing it in your 401k or an IRA Roth edition.
If it's the same, then I'll just do it through employer because it's just the money's automatic and I
Yeah,
don't
it's
have to
just a
look at
direct
it.
contribution.
Because
Yeah,
if I look at it when hit my bank account, I'll be tempted to just use it for something. So it's better to just
yeah.
take it out in the front end.
Automation is a great friend for retirement. Yep.
Yeah, it's not a good old nudge.
So it sounds like at least what you're doing right now is you've got both a pre-tax 401k and you're contributing about 6% to that. Then you've got this Roth 401k option that your employer offers and you're doing 2% of that because your goal is to just do 8% of your earnings towards a 401k, right? I
Yep.
wasn't aware, I didn't realize that like some employer groups didn't match on like on one of those, right? Like I didn't realize that was a thing, but maybe that's very common. Um, so out of curiosity, like what are your sort of underlying investments?
For the 401ks, I picked the optimal retire at 60 thing, pretty traditional, and then I picked the other for 80% of my funds, and then I picked the other for the other 20% of my funds, going to a growth dividend fund, which out of all of the growth funds for Vanguard was the least exposed or hyper exposed to semiconductors, which like all of the other growth funds had like a crazy allocation to like Nvidia, and I just thought that was a wild allocation strategy. So I picked the one that was like most diversified in my book. So that was the growth fund and picked that. So that's 20% and then 80% to the retire at 60, which is a kind of standard S&P kind of distribution. Um, and then my individual stocks in my brokerage account, it's basically like play money. It's not like I don't even look at that as like real stuff, but I've got like a good amount of semiconductor exposure on that one. I participated in the ARM IPO, which
Ooh.
is not doing well. Thank God, love to see it. But you know what?
I was about to say, in comparison to Nvidia, have you looked at
I know.
Nvidia over the last like 3 years or something? It's a ridiculous return.
And
Yeah,
no, over the last 3 years, it's a roller
it's a
coaster.
roller coaster, but
Yeah.
okay, yeah. Is it
Over the
the okay?
last
So
3 months,
the last year maybe it's been yeah
yeah,
through the
yeah.
roof.
And I didn't want to touch it for like, I sold it like on the way down, which was awesome for
What
me.
Nvidia?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was really great. I'm exposed to AMD, which is like the competitor. TSM, which is a monopoly on all like semiconductor production, which for some reason, for being a monopoly, doesn't perform that well. And then I've got Mattel exposure because hi Barbie, and they're definitely gonna get massive payouts for
I love
like
it.
um like over the next few months on like their royalties for all of the movie from Warner Bros. And then some Amgen because I'm a big fan of M&A arbitrage and Amgen was going to buy Horizon Therapeutics, and it's been blocked for a while in the courts, but it got greenlit, and so thankfully, yeah, it's an opportunity there. And Flex LNG, which is a uh, liquid gas shipping company, which is another monopoly. Love monopolies, and that's my that's my exposure for stocks and general stock market.
Got it.
It's like all the hot topics right there, man.
Yeah, you're like
Yeah, yeah,
a trendy man.
yeah.
But
GPUs,
ahead of the trends,
semiconductors.
ahead of the trend.
Ahead of the trends. I don't know if you know this or not, but like the world of ETFs has grown like substantially over the past like few years, and especially the world of specialty ETFs. And the other
Oh,
day, someone was talking to me about I believe it's called TEMA, TEMA, and they have an ETF
Look it
that
up.
specializes in um, monopolies and oligopolies.
whoa! I should be a fan of. Wow, thank you. That's
Yeah, so
awesome.
I'll send you a link to that, and for everyone who's listening, I'll make sure it's posted somewhere, and then for our YouTubers, it'll be in the comments. But um, just so you could check it out, I did check it out, and honestly, I do my T-bills through public.com, so I purchased them through a sort of separate brokerage, but they do a ton of like advertising about specialty ETFs because the whole platform is made for people to do automatic recurring investments into ETFs,
Mm.
and then also do T-bills. And so they were giving away free shares of the TEMA. They have two different types. There were two different ETFs. There was one that was focused on monopolies and oligopolies, and then the other one was focused on stocks that you can't get through like Nasdaq and the normal avenues we have here. So you could get access into
Like global
yeah,
exposure.
yeah, like
Like
LVMH
Portia
and
would
yeah,
love
Wow,
to be,
yeah.
would
they have
love
an
to be here.
oncology ETF too. That's pretty cool.
Oh, so you're checking it out? Yeah, I mean it's
I'm looking at it right now. The monopolies and
it don't
how
read
do you
that way.
oligopolies, huh?
It
Well,
doesn't read
it's
that way.
ones that you would kind. I guess it's a little like I look at it as like Moody's, Visa, Airbus, which I get it, but Intuit, that's an interesting one. I don't know if you
I
guys know too
thought they
much.
were
You know Intuit.
broke. I thought they went out of
Intuit?
business into it.
Intuit?
Intuit?
No.
No, they TurboTax was their main thing, but they have really cornered the market. Intuit does QuickBooks, and they have man,
Oh
they have
yeah,
a
yeah.
really fantastic lobbying group with Congress. I'll put it that way. They have been able to successfully kind of block out competition and ensure that taxpayers' ability to, and this might be changing. I can't remember. It was recently in the news of the ability of an individual to file their own tax return. Um, that's always a big point of contention.
Whoa, that's awesome.
That there's a strong
I mean, awesome
incentive
for
for that,
Intuit.
not to happen, right? Because they have TurboTax and all that kind of stuff. So it is one of those that they kind of corner the market in that.
I
But
mean,
that oncology one seems
shout
pretty
out to
interesting.
Intuit. Put that on
Yeah,
your radar. That's awesome.
yeah.
Well, all right. So So it sounds like, we've covered investing. Sounds like you sort of know your game there, and you have a little bit of a blend approach. You're doing like this 60% towards a target retirement date portfolio, and then you're doing like a smaller percentage towards like a growth fund, which I think is interesting. Um, I would like to ask you something. Given your financial journey, uh, do you think that you have any sort of examples of where you might have failed um, big time, either in investing or like big purchases, anything like that?
Yeah, I do. I do have some big L's. Um, so so many big L's. Oh my God. Yeah. Well, my biggest of all the L's is I'm gonna look it up to make sure. Stack. Well, I bought Bill Ackman's SPAC in 2021, and I don't even remember what the name of it was, but it was, I've just forced it out of my memory. But this stupid thing in 2021, SPACs were all the rage, and I hopped on what was supposedly gonna be take striped public, which is like a crazy unicorn, and I was like, all right, this is awesome. You just like mega balloon. Um, and they never did, and I freaking lost a ton of money, like some to the order of like 6 grand. I lost
Sheesh.
on this. Yeah, it was not good. And then I had like the sunk cost fallacy where I just held on to it even further. It was terrible.
Mm.
Uh, so definitely stayed away from SPACs and trendy Wall Street bets type things. From after that one.
Mm.
I also sold Nvidia. Shout out to Nvidia at the top. And then I sold when like I was in grad school and I was just like just bleeding. I was like, no, screw this. Nvidia was trading at 116 when I sold, and over the last, 4 months, like it's now at
Oh my
439.
goodness. Oh
So,
no.
yeah, another massive L. And then another L is I bought a motorcycle when I was working, and I learned a hard lesson of there's a difference between buying something and then being able to afford to buy something and being able to afford to own something. And that was a hard lesson for me. Um, Picture this beautiful Yamaha R6, blue, white, just the dream motorcycle. I've always wanted the street bike, been like my dream motorcycle that I've always wanted to get. And so come around, I have enough money. I decided that I kind of want to buy a motorcycle, and I have enough money. It checks out, and I go and I find a motorcycle and I buy it, and nothing but a blip. I was fine. It was, just a drop in my bucket. But then I had to register the bike, and so bike cost me like 6 grand to buy. To register it in DC, you know, they 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 quoted the Kelly Blue Book when it was like brand new, so they like made me pay the registration was like $1,400.
Mm.
Then I had to buy a helmet, which was $400, so that's 1,800. Then I had to buy get it like serviced, it's another 800. So that is we're at 1,800. We're at 3,600 there. Then my insurance was $200 a month, so 3,800. And then I had to pay parking because Yamahas are R6s are the most stolen motorcycle in the nation, which is why the insurance was so expensive. And so I had to get parking. So that was another $200 a month, which was in addition to my car that I owned. So that was $4,000 just out the gate, just to buy and just to own the thing. So then every month after that, I was bleeding $400 a month, and I had no idea what I had signed up for. And I then also had to pay obviously for the car that I owned in the insurance, and that basically was tough because I had to basically sell this motorcycle that I loved and I always wanted, um, realizing that I definitely couldn't afford to own it. But I'll come
What did you sell
around.
it for?
I sold it for like 4,100, so I lost another 2,000 there. So within 9 months, I bled like $12,000 for
Hmm.
something that like I had the money for 6,000, but I didn't have 12,000 annual. Like it was just a lot. And
Hmm.
so I learned just the lesson of, you gotta really look into the cost of ownership of things,
Hmm.
and taxes and everything else. And so, yeah, you gotta take it easy. Yeah, so that was another hard lesson that
Okay.
I gotta learn
Well, we
after
all,
all the,
yeah,
yeah.
we all learn our lessons in different ways, and I think that's fine. It
I feel like
sounds
that's
like
the
you've
same with
learned from
home
it.
ownership, though, man. Like
Yeah.
it's effectively, the going rate. I think the recommended is like about 10% of your home, your purchase price, right? Is
Hmm.
um, put aside 10% on an annual basis, or not 10%. That can't be right. That seems
Cool.
pretty high. Yeah, that's
On
high.
an annual basis?
Maybe it's like 5% or something like that, but it's still a sizable chunk where for upkeep, right? Like you bought the thing, you want to keep it in um, good enough shape, you may want to do some changes to it, right? And those are those kind of unexpected side costs, repair costs, maintenance costs that sneak up
Five to
on you.
10% of the value of the purchasing value, right?
That's what I always heard. Yeah, it was that like
Yeah.
whatever you're going in and you're buying it, like make sure that
That's
you
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 have five
have
to 10% for it. Yeah, that
five to
makes
ten
sense
percent
because
for on an annual basis for upkeep, repair, stuff like that.
hmm yeah, it's tough.
I I we recently moved in here like a couple years ago, and we bought it prior to demo, and we got the opportunity to sort of choose different things. But one of the things that we kind of liked about what was going to happen with the plan is that they were going to take the two AC units and put them on the roof.
Hmm.
And that way in our backyard, it wouldn't be noisy. Like we could talk to each other. Those things weren't always turning on and ruin the vibe and all that kind of stuff. Well,
Turns out.
fast forward to this past week, I was trying to get our AC serviced, and we waited 2 months for these people to come out here. They finally come out here, and they look up and they're like, "Oh, actually, we can't do this with our normal
Yeah.
ladder. We need a 40-foot ladder." And I was like, "Oh, well, can you go get one?" And they were like, "No, no, no, no. We have to reschedule, and we need to charge you for the rental of the 40-foot ladder." And I was like, "Well, how much is that?" They're like, $150. So I was like, "So every time I need to get my AC looked at, I have to pay $150 for y'all to rent a ladder?"
Or
You should
buy
just
a
buy one.
40-foot
Yeah.
ladder.
So
Like
I asked them, I was like, "Can I just buy a ladder?" And they were like, "No, we don't. We that's not
Right.
like allowed,
From a
liability and all this kind of stuff."
whoa.
So
yeah.
just so you know, it's like now I'm like, man, I wish I wish those AC units were down here.
That's like the noise. It said that $150 every six
Or
months. Yeah.
buy or like renovate your roof so that you can like get onto your roof,
Yeah,
a little attic.
Because you're supposed to you're supposed to have your AC units, every 6 months, right?
Yeah.
Every like major change of season,
Three
we were
hundred bucks every year.
every year for your ladder.
yeah.
Yeah, man.
It's an annoying thing, and like
Yeah.
it's just stuff like that you kind of learn. And I mean, home ownership, you can't. It's really difficult to calculate the total cost of home ownership, and I think it's
Yeah.
very different for a lot of people. But like even things like that, every house has its quirks, and it's very difficult to predict every single cost that you're going to incur. As the example shows,
Yeah.
but it's the total cost of ownership is definitely something that you have to consider in any sort of purchase that you make. But either way, I think you've learned your lesson. I will say this: I want to praise you a little bit because I noticed a few things like as we were talking. So like number one, I think you've obviously. It doesn't feel like your upbringing was like let us teach you everything you need to know about financial literacy. Like I think you've learned a lot on your own and doing your own research, and I think that's made you sort of like a more active person in your own personal financial situation, right? Like you know how to buy T-bills from Treasury Direct. That is a very specific thing, and I think that requires a lot of like attention to detail and understanding and going through a process and being willing to learn and like make mistakes. I also think just the fact that you're picking your own stocks. I will say this, like, for all my family members, I kind of steer them towards tax advantage things prior to taxable things, but still it's such a small percentage of, I think, your wealth that's probably focused in that. But like, you're researching companies, you're learning about their future and their potential. And I think that there's so much goodness in that. And I think that that's like a very positive thing. So did want to praise you on that. Out of curiosity, like in your financial journey, is there anything that you would sort of recommend to people to take action on? Anything that you think is a good opportunity? Anything that you would advise people on, just speaking from experience?
Yeah, I think there's like two things I would say. You kind of touched on it, Mike, a little bit there. Was one, if you're going to do stocks, I would say like don't follow the craze. Like stocks in like the stock market is like it's a game of information. So if you're gonna get into it, like whatever you can find like marginal where you feel like you have marginally more information than the next person, like that is probably an avenue for you to explore. Like maybe you're really into sports and like that the NFL is up for a new contract for like they're getting their helmets designed, and the company is this, and they're gonna like get a big windfall. Like that's a piece of information that not everyone knows, and like it's just something that has like gives you a little edge, and that you will find this like exciting and interesting to you that will keep you kind of motivated would be one. And then two is definitely the free money that comes from like fixed return assets, like the fixed asset game, PIMCO, shout out to PIMCO. Like like getting into Treasury Direct is like huge, and there's easier ways to do it through like Publix, as Mike was mentioning, but it's something where you can control your flow of like income. It's like giving you a fixed return. It's better than a savings account. And like the questions that you can ask yourself are like, will I need this money in the next 3 months? And then or 2 months or next month if you want. And if the answer is like no, then it's like, all right, then like is this note bill like auctioning off, like is the interest rate that it's going to yield me higher than a high yield savings account? If the answer is yes, then you can proceed and like buy yourself a treasury bill, and then you'll put the money in and it'll just reappear in 1 month time frame with some more money in it in your bank account, and you can just keep doing that. Obviously with the note that you have to keep track of the news, knowing that when the Fed will stop raising interest or start cutting interest, this is all going to change. But overall, just to say, like, there is like better ways to use your money than just throwing it into your savings account or a high yield savings. I know these guys are fans of high yield savings accounts, but there's one additional level to it that is interesting and not that scary to get into.
I think that generally makes sense. Like I think about, you have your traditional checking and savings, and then when it comes to that sort of like further out money or things you think are soon to need money, there's a whole universe of sort of like cash alternatives. There's T-bills, there's high yield savings accounts, there's Ibonds, there's all sorts of things. And so it's just worth evaluating what those things could look like for you, and what makes the most sense to you. And of course, we're all our own people, so it's just like you have to evaluate your own level of tolerance for risk and how much access you want immediately to your money, and all that kind of stuff. So that's great. Out of curiosity, Erik, sort of like just to wrap up, and listening to sort of Ricardo's situation and where he's at, is there sort of anything that you would throw out for his consideration? Just like, we're here in the safe space, we treat people like family. Like what would you say, hey, Ricardo, maybe you should research this or consider this?
I'll back it from your original goal, right? So what you kind of mentioned is your original goal of having the house on the lake, boat, two-car garage, horse, which is an awesome goal. Like I love it. That's a fantastic goal. To do that, you're gonna have to you have to make sure that your credit score is as high as you can get it, right? Um, to some degree, and unfortunately, it is a little bit of a game, right? Like if you know how the credit score is calculated, you kind of have to like maximize this and minimize that, right? Maximize the amount that you have available to you, have the self um, restraint to not use it, and have it over a long period of time, right? And there's like that slow trajectory of getting up to the credit score that you're kind of going for. So my recommendation, what I kind of hear is like from a credit card perspective is just one example, right? Is like I would think about maybe downgrading cards versus and keep them and put $10 on them once a quarter or whatever, and slowly, if that's one mechanism to get additional lines of credit and additional total credit amount, right? Um, to show that longevity, so that when that time comes to buy that dream home, um, it's not a last minute trying to like kind of scramble. So like to some degree, just kind of think of a plan, right, from now to where you want to be when it comes time for that home. Of like how do you go from wherever you are from your credit score right now to where you think you want to be and need to be come time for that home purchase, and how uh, those decisions with regards to credit may or may not impact that overall trajectory, right? Because I think that is really the thing that impacts your credit score is the longevity of it, of continuity of, from their perspective, good stewardship of credit, right? So paying off those student loans, in my mind, probably worth doing some additional digging, but in my mind, like paying them off entirely, I don't know that would negatively impact for a long term, right? It might see like a momentary blip because of loss of lines and all that kind of stuff, but if you're likewise continuing to like expand how much institutions are willing to lend you bit by bit, I would think that would have a prevailing like a counter prevailing motion for you.
Yeah. Yeah, even like opening like a credit line at a bank might be like an easy way. It's just like keeping it open and not using it. Like could be a something I could do.
Well, I can tell you, I think like right now, like if I were to pull up our like Credit Karma, right, of all the lines of credit that we have, I think we had a car loan at one point. We paid it off, right? But
Hmm.
everything that we have now, aside from the house, are credit cards, right? Like that's it. It's just credit cards. It's just a bunch of credit cards and um, our mortgage, and we've refinanced a couple times so that you open some, you close some, you reopen them, and all that kind of stuff. But
Hmm.
um,
Yeah.
so
Um, so here would be my things for you, Ricardo. Um, One, I do think, and I think you're tracking this because you've already sort of mentioned it, but like obviously you're sort of indexed heavily towards the T-bills. And so when the yield returns to a normal curve, and the interest rates aren't so attractive for T-bills, just making sure that you have a cash management strategy in mind, and thinking about what that looks like. At that point, it may not be more advantageous to do a T-bill versus a high yield savings account. They might be virtually the same or even a lesser return on a T-bill.
Hmm.
So just looking into that, and no penalty CDs and that sort of thing. The other thing I was going to say is like, right now you're renting and you're in Chicago, which is it's a pretty high cost city. You're in the West Loop, so you're fancy. So I would consider if there's any way to start paying via credit card. And there is this thing called the BILT Rewards credit card. And I think it's worth just researching and looking into to see if there's an opportunity to use the BILT Rewards credit card to get points on all of your monthly rent. My understanding is that like companies like BILT they're able, well, not companies, but cards like BILT are able to basically allow you to pay your rent even if the end user and receiver of your payment does not accept credit cards. It will basically produce a check for them, but will still allow you to pay as if it were a credit card, which sounds really cool. And I think it's something that like a lot of people have tried in the past, but now it might be an opportunity for everyone. And then I really do think you should look into a Roth IRA. I'm a big fan of Roth, like everything. I'm long on Roth, as they say. And so, I don't know your income, but like you should check to see if your income allows you to contribute to a Roth and at what amount. And if it does, then maybe that's a place where you could sort of take on even some of those things that you're taking on in a taxable situation right now. Because, for me personally, I know that like I'm a fan of not necessarily picking stocks, but I like the idea of like ETFs that are high income, that yield passive income, or have like really high significant capital appreciation, but may yield higher dividends. And so I think that you don't want to pay taxes on all these dividends all the time, right? A Roth IRA would allow you to sort of acquire some of those higher yield stocks, and not have to pay taxes on the dividends every single year for the rest of your life. So it's an avenue where you can get some tax advantaged growth, and it's also pretty flexible, right? You can pull out contributions to a Roth IRA, which is tempting. You can't pull out earnings, but you can pull out contributions penalty free. And that's something that just makes it a little bit more dynamic as a tool. So it's just something to consider. So those would be sort of like my things that I think you could look into. But anyways, I really appreciate you having the courage to step out on the show here. I think it's not always easy to talk about, your personal finance and your situation and the different things you're dealing with. So, kudos to you, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.